call this meeting of the Northfield Finance Committee to order, and it is being videoed and it's going to be audio recorded as well. So Dan Campbell is not here because he's on duty downstairs as town clerk with the early voting, and I'm not sure about Tony. So first we have on our agenda tonight to talk about the EMS budget. So if you want to come forward. Sure. First off, Mark, I would rather you did not put in, we've asked that people not put in the COLA amount. We take care of that. We determine what it's going to be. We know you want a COLA, no question. They all do. But now somebody's got to do the math to reduce that out before we start over again. So.
Well, I understand what you're saying. However, being that I'm an enterprise fund and I'm the one that actually funds it, in order for me to
voters fund the enterprise.
In order for me to be able to determine what my assessment question will be to the town, I need to come up. I have to know what that number is based on an assumption on the COLA. So. I understand what you're saying, but for my purposes, I have to put that in there in order to try to determine what the net amount is going to be between what my expected revenue is and what we're asking for.
I see. Okay, I want to first make sure that all of us are on the same set of figures because you've turned in at least two that I know of.
Well, I've only given you one. I'm not sure how you got the first one, so.
Oh, well, through Andrea, probably. Okay, we got one 2 weeks ago when we met from her, so now maybe that isn't from you either.
So the document that you should have should request initially for expenses and wages. That line should be the $44,621. Is that the one that you have?
That's the most current we have.
No.
No, I have two of them. There was one for $85,451.
Yeah, that one is wrong.
And then there's the other one I have for $44,621.
All right, now you're looking at the total expense? Maybe I'm not looking.
No, he's looking for how much he wants to appropriate from the town for for taxation for wages and salaries.
Okay. The one I have is $55,884.
Okay, so that's the bottom one. That's the note on the truck. The line.
Yeah, yes, and includes that. Above it is $44,621.
Yeah, so that's the correct budget that we should
okay.
have.
Okay. All right. Is that what we've all got? Hold on a second.
Yeah, no problem.
Or you click on it with me.
See it. It's this here.
Okay, yeah, I'll look on it.
You got it.
We'll try to make you a quick copy here on the copier.
You've got it?
Jack has it.
Oh, okay. We're all set.
No,
thank you.
I don't have it, but that's.
We'll get you a copy of it.
All right. Well, that was given out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that might have been the week I wasn't here.
Yeah, might be then, yeah.
I'm going to use the one downstairs, it still needs a number.
So I'd like to start by just introducing some people, obviously.
You had to go somewhere else.
Yeah. So to my right here, this is Dan Nietzsche. Dan Nietzsche works for the Franklin County Regional Governments. He's the author of the study, EMS study document.
Yeah.
That, unless you had some questions related to that, I know there was some questions at one time that he would be here to discuss it and answer questions you might have related to that. To my left, when Cam comes back, this is Cameron Kennedy. He's a paramedic. He's also my new deputy chief of EMS. He's replacing Tom Valley.
Oh, okay.
Who is no longer on the department.
Okay.
Cam here comes from, he was a basic EMT with the town of Northfield for quite a while. Left to go to Louisiana as a paramedic. He was down there for a couple of years, worked in there as a manager supervisor at Arcadian Ambulance Service down in Louisiana, which is a very large ambulance service down there. Him and his friend Becca have moved back to town. They have purchased the double house down here at 49 and 51 Main Street.
Yeah.
Cam was on one side, Becca was on the other side. I have two paramedics that live just 2 houses down from the EMS station, and they're
Yeah.
a huge addition, great addition to the service. So
Okay.
I welcome them back. So.
All right. There was one that we got that was 80 some odd thousand.
Right.
And did that not come from you, or it did?
That was my initial draft that I gave to the town administrator.
Okay.
And there was an error in that related to the wage account, which
Thank you.
I had not. I made an error in it, and it was calculating duplicating, so
Okay,
it was wrong right from the beginning.
okay. So, you know, we go through and question any items that have changes in them. So why don't we do that, and then why don't we talk about the big picture of what's coming up? So I notice electricity has you're going up a couple $100, which is,
We've gone from about $80 a month to about $115 a month on average down to the EMS station.
okay. And telephone. Now, is that cell phones? It must be. Or
No. The telephone account, we didn't have enough in there for the long distance charges that were now coming through the town and then being charged to me, so this is just to include.
Okay. All right. Postage. It's gone up $50. Is that notices of some sort for your meetings or what?
Cost of postage has gone up.
That's what-
The cost of postage
Yeah,
itself has
I was
just
wondering
gone
what
up.
you use it for. Is it your,
Oh, so we have to mail to the billing company the packages of
Yeah.
our runs so they
Okay.
can bill.
all right. Now, this 1176, other purchases you've dropped out this time. What did that represent?
Other purchases.
Other purchase?
It was 1176.
Just-
So that was something that I'd never had a line item for. It was something that the accountant charged something to. You'll see that like last year's budget, it was 0 before that.
Yeah,
And then they charged something to that line item.
okay,
I'm not exactly sure why, but
all right. Did you get the notice from the COG of the charges for the radio? We got it.
yeah, I just got it today actually. It was 40,
Yeah, we got it yesterday.
4,407. It was like
40,
44.
I rounded 4472.
Yeah, so I was pretty fortunate that I estimated 4,500.
Pretty
So
close,
we're right
yeah.
there, so.
Okay. All right. So you're anticipating you'll be short 44,621 from the enterprise fund then?
Correct.
Okay. You go ahead and explain how you arrive at that.
So last year's budget this is basically a similar request to what we had last year, where the town raised and appropriated. I believe it was $42,000 last year. We're at $44,000 this year. And basically that money is going from the increase in revenue from the service that we're providing, and basically transferring that money into wages and salaries. The wages and salaries are to help better cover 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year with trained staff to be able to respond to calls when they happen.
Now, you said 24/7.
Mhm.
Are you going to, what do you have now? As I understood it, it was just one shift covered.
So what we have currently today.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's what I have money allocated and budgeted for, and then there's the ability to staff that plan, okay, which is two different things. So the money that was budgeted for is one person, Okay, so it takes 2 people to run an ambulance.
Yeah.
You can't have a crew, you can't transport with 1 person. You have to have 2 people who are trained at least the EMT level to respond. The first person, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, we have money budgeted for 16 hours out of the day for a full hourly rate, which was the 1953, I think it is, right?
Yeah, 1963, what it is.
I forget what the rate is currently. I think it's 1953 or something like that. 1906, something like that. Whatever the hourly rate is. So it's 16 hours a day, and then the other 8 hours of the day would be money allocated to pay somebody half hourly pay to be on call.
Okay, now that 16 hours, what level of service is that? Paramedic?
Whatever we can get.
Yeah, okay.
The good news is that right now, majority of it is paramedics. Right now, I'm very paramedic top heavy, which is actually a very good thing.
Yeah.
The more medics I have, the less ALS intercepts I have to request, which costs me money to do that. So if we can provide it ourselves, it's money we're not paying somebody else to do the service. That's 1 person. So out of 1 person for 24 hours a day, 16 hours out of that day, we could pay somebody a full hourly rate, non-benefited, just an hourly rate. Those 16 out of the 24 hours, we expect them to be in the station, available to take that truck at a moment's notice and move that truck from point A to point B if we need.
Now, are you able to do that now? Are you getting 16 hours of coverage by someone down at the station now?
A majority of the time. That's why I said the difference between what we have allocated and our actual ability is 2 different things. So that's the first person. The second person, we have money budgeted for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, at a half hourly rate for somebody to make that second person to be on call.
So they're supposed to be available to come to the station and go work.
Correct. Or like if we're going to Bernardston, that person is in the station in the truck, and we get a call to Bernardston, I can meet them at Dead River, jump on the truck, and then we make it continue on from there. So,
Yeah.
So we have the ability to pay somebody to be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, funding that. But somebody in the station, in theory, 16 hours a day. However, the problem is that we don't have currently any full-time people who are dedicated to the town of Northfield. These are people that are working full-time jobs in other places, that they want to pick up some extra hours, they want to come to Northfield, they work for us, and they're picking up these shifts. So like I got one guy who comes in on, he works 16 hours on Monday, he'll go home, he'll come in and work another 8 hours on Tuesday, so he's picking up 24 hours in a week, and he's still working his full-time job somewhere else. I have another guy, he likes working Fridays and he likes working Sundays, so he'll come in Friday, he actually will take the full 24 hours, meaning that he'll be paid his 16 hours of full hourly time at the station, and then he'll stay at the station, get paid the other half hourly rate, but he'll stay at the station for the other 8 hours. So basically in the 24-hour day, he's in the town of Northfield, we'll pay him for 20 hours of compensation for that.
Okay, I'm going to keep asking and making sure we all understand the difference between what you've got now and what you might be projecting here for next year. And if it's all one and the same, we'll say so, but I just want to make sure we're talking about which year we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you're talking about what
This
is
is what
currently.
this is what we're currently doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So,
Anybody else have questions? Go ahead. Okay, good.
and so obviously if somebody comes in off shift, we would pay them the town's 2 hours minimum charge for that.
Mm-hmm.
Cam, for example, Becca, they live just down the road from the EMS station. Myself, we're not putting ourselves on the compensation staffing
You're
schedule.
calling it call-out time, and
So basically, we're just working from the pager, meaning that, so instead of the town paying this guy or me to be on call for 16 hours, the town is getting that for free currently today, and then if we go on a call, we get compensated for going on the call. It's been godsend since these guys have moved back because they've been a big help in moving that truck as of January 1st. It's been fantastic. So we're in a much better place than we were a few months ago. So when you look at the budget, there's a couple of different line items. There's the amount of money allocated to pay to do that sort of staffing, and then there's the incidental money that we have to put in there for the people who, if I work a 16-hour shift and I'm at the end of that 16 hours, but I'm on a late call, I still have to compensate them for those additional hours that they're beyond the 16.
Mm-hmm.
That make sense? So, if you look at my budget for next year, you'll see over here, there's this box on the right-hand side. This is my staffing plan, for what we want to do for next year.
Yeah.
And really nothing has changed other than the fact that we want to take 2,080 hours, which is a full-time equivalent, and move it from being straight hourly 16 hours blocks or whatever it is, to this person works for the town of Northfield. They have an obligation to the town of Northfield by making them a full-time employee. We've also added in here an amount of money for benefit costs. And then this person, we would give them a dedicated shift. Right now, the problem that we have when trying to allocate people to volunteer to come in is that on Saturdays, nobody wants to work Saturdays. If I'm working a full-time job somewhere else, most of us who are in EMS either A, work full-time somewhere else on Saturdays, or two, there's no desire if I have a Saturday off to want to work it.
Yeah.
So if you get sick on a Saturday, and I hate to say it, it's not just us, it's every ambulance service, you're going to have a hard time getting a quick response from any ambulance service.
Now, how is the full-time position going to change that?
So this person, if we were to hire the full-time person, their full-time job would be
Weekends.
you're working Saturday for us, and then obviously we would work it out something different to say, look, okay, so there's potentially 16 hours on Saturday. The 8-hour overnight, we can probably manage to take the risk and figure out how we're going to staff that some way else. And then 16 hours somewhere else in the calendar and the rest of the week somewhere.
Okay. How do you set your rate of pay,
How do we set the rate of pay?
the hourly rate?
So currently, we are the same rate as all public safety members, fire department, the police department, reserve officers, we're all the same rate.
Okay.
I would, the amount of money that I have allocated here, to be honest with you, I put in a rate of $45,000 as a salary for that person. To be honest with you, it's for a seasoned medic, we're not gonna get a seasoned medic for that kind
I
of
was going to say, what's the going rate around for the others? The
a
county?
newer medic with a few less years of experience who is looking to maybe not go to work in Springfield or some of these major metropolitan areas, we might be able to entice somebody in for that kind of money. But I didn't want to get too extravagant. At the same point in time, as I wanted to be realistic, is that we needed to do something.
It's a good point, though, about the types of calls, maybe from an area like this versus the city.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I work not only here, but I also work in town of Orange full time. Just the difference in the populations between here and Orange, the different call volume, the calls that you get.
Yeah.
If you get called in the town of Northfield or you get called in Bernardston, this area on this side of the mountain, you get a call, these people are sick. There's no question about it. A bunch of old-time New Englanders, I've had chest pain for the last, 3 weeks, but you know what? Ass angina will go away. No, it's actually a raging heart attack, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
Where you, on the other side of the town, I don't say town, but on other communities, people have been watching Doogie Howser and all these things on TV where, oh my God, I got a hangnail. Not only do I need an ambulance, but I need pain medicine and everything else. people in this town, if they call in an ambulance, they're sick. They really are sick.
I was thinking of some of the criminal activities too that might cause it.
Well, yes.
Whatever.
We in this community are not exempt, but
No.
it's not as prevalent as in some other places.
And I know at one time, several years ago, going through the EMT training for paramedics, they had to go to a city to get exposed to some of that type
Yep.
of thing.
So we don't. So the good news, like when Renee was taking the paramedic course, yeah, you're right. They had to have vests, and they had to go to New York City, and they had to ride down there. That was back when paramedics were just now starting to come to the area, and they didn't have programs. I was the class of 13, the 13th class out of GCC, and I think they're up to like 21 or something
I
like
was
that.
class 19,
Yeah,
so
so-
I think they're even past
So they've been doing it like 20 something years now, and they actually have programs now where you don't have to go away, but you still have to do hundreds of hours of ride time on a truck, getting calls and doing calls
Yeah.
in real situations in order to get your certification. So,
Okay, now up until last year, I believe it was, you were able to fund the operation out of your enterprise fund,
correct.
right? Up until last year. You've got, somewhere I saw the call volume and so forth. Have you a breakdown between Northfield and Bernardston for calls?
So I only have last year's
Yes.
data because we've been doing Bernardston for 1 year. So I don't know if you saw this document. This is this is the historical for the last since 2011 all the way to 2019, what our call volume has been. We've gone from 209 in 2011 to 460 last year. Obviously, Bernardston is included in that, but the year before, 2018, when we didn't have Bernardston, we did 359. So even without that, we've seen a huge increase in the call volume.
Yeah, I didn't have that.
So for the-
I think we had that.
So for the 1 year, I call it the EMS performance for Bernardston,
Yeah,
and I thought it was included in there, maybe I'm wrong.
no,
We did, for the 1 year from December 15th of 18, when we first took over from AMR, from Medcare, to 12/15 of 2019. So it's not a whole, it's an entire calendar year, but it's not on the actual calendar year. So 12/15 to 12/15, we did 470 calls total. Of that, Northfield was 222. Bernardston was 157. We get called to Coleraine once, Irving 9 times, Gill 21 times, Greenfield 20 times, Orange 6 times, Turner's Falls 22, Warwick 4, Winchester 8. Now keep in mind is that we only do Bernardston and Northfield as our primary ambulance coverage.
yeah,
So these other communities where we've been 20 and 30 times, it's because their primary ambulance service was unable to call for an ambulance, to get an ambulance for them.
Yeah.
They called us mutual aid. So we did 20,
I got Northfield, Bernardston, and then Coleraine was one, you said.
correct.
Whoop, and then Irving. There
Yep.
was one after that I didn't get.
Gill was 21.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Greenfield 20.
Yeah, Orange 6,
Yeah.
Turner's Falls 22.
Yeah, Warwick 4 and Winchester 8. And then I actually have it broken down as for the calls that occurred in that time frame. I actually have, as of today, what the money, the actual revenue that we've created as a result of those runs per community.
How does it work when it's other than Northfield or Bernardston? How it's mutual aid,
So we would still bill that patient like we would if they were one of our patients, and we'd expect them to pay our rates as if we would bill somebody else.
yeah,
There are some exceptions to that, is if us having paramedics, we will send a paramedic truck to like Greenfield or Turner's Falls, where they may have a BLS truck, a basic truck, and they need the paramedics that we can provide. Just like if I requested a paramedic from them, they would bill
Yeah.
me for that service. I turn around and I bill them. The problem is I'm only billing them $250 for that service. It comes back to another problem with the whole Medicare for all and everybody is that Medicare only pays $350. If I request 250 of it, the other community's not going to make a single dime on that call. So we try to share that cost and expense. So again, as our population here continues, and this is why we're sort of in this situation where I'm asking again for money from the town, is our population has not, our population volume hasn't changed. We still have 3,005 citizens. The problem is that they're no longer 40 years old. They're now 65 years old and 70 years old. And as they transitioned from the 40-year-old where they have Blue Cross and Blue Shield insurance where I can charge them $4,000 and they're going to pay me $4,000 for that service, I now have to do 10 times more the runs in order to get the same revenue because now
Medicare is
only going to pay $300 for that service.
Yeah.
It doesn't even cover the cost of the service.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, as our population continues to age, our call volume has to increase in order to offset the expenses, or the value of the service has to be as such that the town understands they're going to have to pay something to keep the service viable.
Something came to mind just recently, and I wonder how you handle it. It's in the paper today. I think Bernardston's going to have soapbox derby.
Yes.
But I happen to be watching TV and watching the select board meeting in Bernardston when the fellows came in that were going to sponsor initiate it and so forth. And one of the selectmen from Bernardston made the comment, then we'll want to call Northfield Ambulance.
Yeah.
Who pays? I mean, you're there for an event,
Yeah.
like you would be if it was in Northfield, I suppose, that
Yeah.
sort of thing,
Yeah.
just in case. But you don't bill anybody. Northfield is paying.
Yes and no. So there's certain events that we will cover because they're public relations events. Like if for some reason we have a parade in town or something like that, it's a community event, we're not going to bill the town of Northfield for our services. I could, in theory, have somebody, if I have 2 people on duty ready to go, I could put them in an ambulance and stage them in Bernardston in the event something happens, and then they would take it. But like things like the Ragnar events that we used to have down to the Mountain Project, the cross-country tournaments that they have down there, they actually contract with us, and we actually charge them a standby rate. Just like a police detail, we charge them a detail rate, and we expect them to pay it. We will pay a premium hourly rate to the people that we will call in to stay and stand by, and they're dedicated to that event. And in the event something happens, they have an ambulance ready to go. If they're not willing to do that, then we understand that soapbox derby, there's going to be some risks associated with that. We will probably stage somebody over there pretty close, but we're not going to charge them. But at the same point in time is that if we get a call in Northfield, they're coming back to Northfield. You're not paying for them to be there dedicated to you at that point in time. And it's first call, first service. So.
Okay.
So instead of being in the station, they're over stored near Bernardston.
We could stage them over there, but they're sitting in the truck ready to go.
But it's not extra personnel.
It could be either way. If they're willing to pay for it, we'll bring in extra personnel to do that. And we have 2 trucks. Both trucks are now at the paramedic level. We can treat people at the paramedic level in either truck. And as long as we have paramedic staff, we can put a paramedic truck over there, and we can leave the paramedic truck here in town. So
I think I read where they're not charging admission, but I think there's an entry fee
correct.
for everybody that puts
That's
something in there.
yeah.
Well, I don't know what to call it.
But
A vehicle or what?
so again, we may go over there and we may stand by, or we may go over there and transport 1, 2, 3, 100 patients, whatever it is, and we would bill them just like we would if they called us for a 911 call to their home.
Okay. Russ, any questions about it?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. So Mark,
Sure.
when you were before us last year, you mentioned that with the increased runs to Bernardston, that it's, when I asked you concerning could this be a recurring charge to the taxpayers each year, you said probably not, because the increased runs to Bernardston would cover these costs, that there wouldn't have to be potentially this coming fiscal year any cost to the residents. Well, obviously that's not occurring because you're asking for, last year 42,000, you're coming back with 44,621. So obviously the increase in runs has not minimized the loss that you're operating at, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The other thing too is that the contract with Bernardston is going to end in what, July 1st of this year?
I think so.
Well, it has the option to end. So the agreement dates shall be July 1st to June 30th of each fiscal year. The initial agreement shall be during the period of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th of 20. The term of this agreement will renew automatically each year for 2 years, after which it may be further extended by written amendment between the parties. In no case will term including and all extensions exceed 25 years.
Okay, so in other words, if you wish to negotiate a deal, not a deal, but where Bernardston has to contribute to the operation of the ambulance or to his capital purchase,
Yep.
that is permissible to negotiate for that with them, or you said automatic renewal? Does that preclude a agreement with them to cover more of the expenses or capital costs of the ambulance?
So I can tell you that nothing has officially been negotiated, nothing has officially been agreed to. However, I took the concerns of this board as well as the finance committee and the town administrator, and I met with.
She came into the meeting, she's behind us.
I met with the fire chief, and I basically said, here are the concerns of my finance committee, is that you're making no contributions to the organization, this and that. And we threw out some numbers and said, every year the town is paying $50,000 a year for an ambulance, which in my mind is the first response vehicle for the town of Northfield, and we can get into the whole whatevers of that. But at the same point in time is that the noise that I'm hearing is that people are concerned that there's no contribution. So Pete Shedd, the fire chief, took that back, talked to his select board, talked to his finance committee. They have in their budget for this year, without any official request, without any official whatever, they have put $10,000 into their budget, and they're prepared to pay that to us for next year for capital, towards the capital purchase. They understand that they've been getting a deal for free, and they understand that they need to help contribute. And this is the first steps in that process to get to a better staffing model. Not staffing model, but to a better financial model. I think I gave you guys the document from South County,
Yes.
and you would see what their assessments to their communities are. The fact that if you can get an ambulance service for $10,000, you should be taking it and running.
That's it. I mean, our taxpayers are going into the 40,000 range. So there's 10,000 of it that they come up with, but they've got a pretty high percentage of the calls too in Bernardston.
Correct, but also keep in mind is that Northfield EMS provides 2 distinct services to the town of Northfield, unlike what we're doing for Bernardston. In the town of Northfield EMS provides not only the ambulance transport, but also the medical first response for our citizens.
Bernardston Fire Department does.
Bernardston Fire Department does that on their own. They're only contracting with us for the ambulance transport piece of it, or the piece of it that we're able to make some revenue, generate revenue on. If it wasn't for the ambulance service here in the town of Northfield, for the last 10 years, there would be an assessment of similar money to the town of Northfield for the purpose of providing medical first response to our citizens, and still contracting with a party to come in and provide the ambulance side of it. We've been able to offset those costs for the last 10 years with the revenue generated by the ambulance service itself. Unfortunately, we're now getting to that point again where the costs are outweighing the revenue that's being generated. However, you have your own ambulance service here in town.
But in spite of that, Mark, the number of in spite of the fact, and it's good that their firemen are trained for first response and so forth, we still have a large number of calls for the ambulance from Bernardston.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they do a similar call volume to what we do, but we are not their first response organization, meaning that.
We'd have a lot more calls over there if we were.
Correct. Because there are calls that they don't call us for because
Yeah.
we're there to provide transport.
Yeah.
But at the same point in time is that if we didn't have an ambulance here in the town of Northfield and you had to pay for medical first response, you would have to have a budget of $50,000 or $60,000 every year that was not funded by any other revenue source. It would have to come straight from taxation. We've been able to cover that for almost 10 years now, the last year being the first year we had that problem. And I've always looked at this, and it's been a disagreement amongst people is that the ambulance that we are that the town and the citizens are paying for, this will be the year 4 of the 5-year note. At some point in time in those 10 years, the town would have had to have bought a first response medical vehicle to provide that service with. Yes, it's a little more expensive, obviously, to buy an ambulance than it would be to buy a medical first response vehicle. However, you're able to generate revenue with this truck compared to if you bought a pickup truck and threw some supplies on it, and then you go out and you bandage up a leg and you wait for an ambulance to show up. So there's value in that service.
Well, I just have a couple of things. Excuse me, Jack. The other thing too is that we were told that a potential agreement with dealing with Irving for services, and we were hoping that hopefully if they're negotiating for some type of free service agreement with them, that they would also, we would like not a repeat of a free service.
Correct.
They're going to have to pay their way. The other thing too is the older ambulance that you have, when are you looking to replace that?
Okay. All right. So to answer both of those questions, I hear you loud and clear about another service coming in and getting it for free. And I can tell you is that in Dannington, as part of the study, we had Irving in, we talked to them, and I think that Andrea can even attest to it, is that the Irving fire chief, he clearly gets that if he was to join us, there would be an assessment, and he is completely on board with it. I mean, he's not on board with some of the numbers that we throw at him, but he understands there's an assessment associated.
I saw something where it's splitting the town of Irving as far as the service coming from Northfield. It's the part that's nearest Northfield.
Okay. So
Right? Is that what they're talking about?
yeah. So let me come back to that question. Let me just finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what was I saying?
Oh, you were mentioning about the obviously you're working charging with
Yeah.
Irving.
So I've heard you loud and clear, and I understand I would not want to enter into any more agreements with other communities unless there is some financial. To get this up and running, we had to go with the zero bid to Bernardston. That I hate to say it, is that it was going to be a non-starter if I walked in there initially and says, I need $30,000 from you. They're going to say, thank you, have a good day, we'll just go somewhere else. Because they do have some other options. They're not good options, but they do have other options. So getting them on board initially is the benefit to our organization, and the long-term partnership with them is more important than the dollars that they could have added initially. I understand moving forward is that we need to get everybody, all the players, to be paying their part. I get it. Okay. The second truck. So the second truck is a 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I have it in my radar for 2027. Would be the replacement of 20 years of that vehicle.
Okay.
Right now we have we're waiting for it to be certified. There should be $140,000 in excess revenue from prior years. Of that $140,000, there will be a request for $37,000 of it to be used to purchase a new cardiac monitor, and that's a whole nother topic we can talk about in a little bit. So right now there's about $100,000 that we have sitting in excess.
Oh, you have sitting in that to pay, so it won't have to come basically out of the tax purchase.
Correct.
Like capital purchase from the tax.
Correct.
To
And
pay for that.
And that's what that whole fund is designed for, is to have money set aside so when we get to that next ambulance purchase, we can either absorb it or pay it outright and and be done with it.
I'm just concerned about the issue of, obviously, we have 2 more years to pay on the bond for the newest ambulance, and then what would be the lifespan, and looking at replacement for the second one, if we're gonna have to, like, I didn't know if it was through 2, 3, 5 years down the road, we're looking to have the bond again for a replacement for the ambulance.
No, I mean, we should be able to get at least 15 to 20 years out of these trucks.
Thank you.
Question for you, South County, the assessments, are they based on a combination of population and EQV?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with how they assess for South County.
Okay.
Wasn't
Mark,
part
do you
of
know that?
process.
I think it was EQV, to be perfectly honest. I think that's what I read in that letter. I'd have to go back. to
Yeah, I thought I saw that somewhere.
I
but-
think it is the EQV scenario with those guys.
Well, if there was a break of the 44,000 based on population or calls, Bernardston is about 40% of Northfield, 60%, which would mean Bernardston share would be about $17,000. But Northfield has a very high EQV because of Northfield Mountain and the Eversource project. So actually a $10,000 share is not out of line when you figure,
Okay.
say 50% EQV and 50% population. Do you know how it was assessed,
I was
Andrea?
looking at this and it
Right here,
does,
Jack.
I see percentages, but I can't tell if they did it straight on percentage. The town assessments on the.
Yeah, I don't think
on
it's percentage. I think it's EQV.
the- Right, so they did an assessment and they talk about percentage, but they don't give, I don't see a breakdown.
It looks like South County used 100% EQV.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm seeing.
So $10,000 would be, I think it would be reasonable for a share to keep this thing
I
going.
should read his note here.
Like I said, I prefer 10 versus 0 any day.
Are there any plans for the COG to do a study regarding a North County ambulance service?
No, if someone proposed one, we would certainly do it, but it's not something that is on our task list for the foreseeable future.
Actually, I was disappointed in the study we were presented because I thought it was going to come up with options like something comparable to South County, what that would entail and all that sort of thing.
Well, it sort of does.
Not to my satisfaction. But
The paragraph for your answer in the letter you received says, after deducting anticipated revenue from services and retained earnings, we are left with the total amount to be assessed to the member towns. In FY20, this is approximately $630,000. The IMA, intermunicipal agreement, I'm assuming, outlines the assessment formula using equalized valuation.
Okay.
So then so as a result, Deerfield was assessed 52, Sutherland 31, Whately 17, and they broke it down from there. So they take out anticipated revenue and then they split it up based on EQ.
Which is kind of how you get to the 44,000 here.
So I wanted to answer your question that you had asked, and then I sort of interrupted you, and I apologize for that. So Irving has 2 distinct service areas currently today. There is the Irving Center portion of town, which is covered by the town of Orange.
okay,
And then there's the Irving side, or Irving, whatever you want to call it, section of town. Basically, the upper end of Old State Road is the dividing line.
oh, okay.
That's where one section turns into the next.
Comes into Route 2 and that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the other side of town. That side of town is covered by AMR as the primary ambulance provider currently today. When we're talking about Irving, we're talking about that section of town, and that section of town only.
The one that abuts,
Correct, down 63, and
Yeah.
that's in the
In the
most,
Miller's Falls.
the population. It's beyond the mountain project,
yeah,
that's where the majority of that population sits.
okay.
It also has Route 2, which, as much as motor vehicle accidents, that's not Medicare, Medicaid, it's auto insurance, so
Yeah.
I like those a little bit. So I can tell you, just to give you an idea, Irving, for half the section of town that they pay an assessment to the town of Orange for that. A little over $40,000 a year for that section of town is what they're paying for that.
I see, okay.
And that's, again, that's an agreement between Orange, Irving, Wendell, Warwick, New Salem, all 5 of them towns, and they all get assessed, and there's I think there's an EQB.
Assessed and
There's
covered
OQB
by,
on that.
covered by Orange.
However, those 5 towns or 4 towns got together, 5 towns got together, and they agreed on how it was going to be assessed, and that's the assessment.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Well, a couple of things here. Let's finish up for this next year on your capital thing and item, and that is that cardiac monitor. That-
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if you have a question.
No, that's for this year, isn't it? 37.
Correct. So to give you an update on that, so since I submitted the budget, we've had our annual state inspection.
Mhm.
The state inspector came out, and we have one new Light Pack 15 that we bought in 2017-ish, I think it was. So it's a couple years old, and it's our top line cardiac monitor that's on the new truck. On the second truck, we have what's called a Light Pack 12, and that was the old technology prior to the Light Pack 15. So not only were we told that it's no longer being serviced, it's out of its expected life expectancy, that there's no longer parts, they're no longer serviced, they're not going to warranty it anymore. The state came out, did our inspection, they looked at that Light Pack 12 on that second truck, and they says, unfortunately, you're going to have to buy brand new batteries for that monitor, or we're going to have to ding in, and you're not going to be able to get paramedic service with that truck anymore. The battery replacement cost was going to be about $1,500. So it made really no sense for me to buy $1,500 worth of batteries when I was going to come in here and request to replace that Light Pack 15, or that Light Pack 12. So I met with the town administrator, we talked about it, and I was able to get Stryker, who now owns the Physio products, to agree to a 3-year lease, where there's no payments for the first 5 months, 6 months of it, with the hopes of getting us into annual town meeting, or we know we have the money in the excess revenue fund. We're looking to pay for this purchase out of the excess revenue at this annual town meeting. We were hoping to do it at a special, but we're not yet certified on the cash or whatever, so we're not going to hold the special anytime soon. So annual town meeting, warrant article to take $37,000 out of excess revenue to pay this thing outright and be done with it. If for some reason it fails, we are in a 3-year lease where I'll have to come up with $10,000 a year for the next 3 years to pay for this thing. But we were it made no sense to throw more money at this cardiac monitor that not only could I not get it certified anyways, but it was going to be replaced anyways.
Okay, the only thing that comes to my mind, you just said that you would be having enough money in a few years to replace the older vehicle that we
Correct.
have. Now, this is coming out of that money.
Yep.
Still going to have enough eventually to...
We'll have to figure it out when we get there.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the need is now for the cardiac monitor. So.
Yeah. Any comments on that?
No, I just have one question that you were brought up. You said at Bernardston that the fire is the first responder. They have a volunteer fire department, right?
Correct.
So they were first responders, and our fire department is not first responders?
That is correct.
Our fire department does not regularly come to any medical calls.
I find that a little surprising.
Police-
I believe what you're saying, but I'm surprised that a fire department is not a first responder.
Our police respond, don't they? They get there.
If they're available.
Uh-huh.
So we don't have a guaranteed first response here?
Well, I mean.
I know you do,
Other,
but what I'm
other than us as the third
but-
service, but if for some reason we can't get a crew together, if I can't get anybody to respond, you're gonna wait until the mutual aid ambulance shows up.
I'm just surprised that, like I said, a volunteer fire department in Bernardston, they do respond, and our volunteer fire department doesn't.
Now, keep in mind is that there have been some calls in Bernardston where we have shown up with the ambulance and we're the only ones there. I mean,
No, I understand.
They have the same problem that we do.
I just am surprised that, the fire doesn't respond. And I understand the police aren't here 24 hours a day either, but I'm a little surprised by that.
But it's always been that way. We haven't had first responders with the fire department that I can recall.
The fire department has never owned medical of anything in this town. Never. I mean, other than the fact that we were housed there for a number of years because there was no other place to put us.
Are they certified as first responders?
No.
I don't want to talk negatively of our fire department, but the answer to that is no.
No.
I thought it was a state mandate.
It clearly is.
Okay.
But at least they haven't certified them so that it's misleading or anything.
Yeah, but if it's a state mandate.
Well,
Mass General Law says that all
That
first
means the
responders will have a
training,
first responder certification as well as CPR certification, and that's not truly happening. I can tell you is that we are currently working in cooperation with them. I can tell you right now, one of our guys, Eric Davidson, he's actually up there at the fire station doing the junior fire department, and there are a couple of members who are taking that course with him. But for an entire department, I cannot speak to whether all of them have mandatory first responder training.
Just from coming back from a background in public safety, I find this very disturbing because if we have a major incident here, our fire department is not certified to provide first responder care. That's a serious concern, I think. When most people are going to expect the fire department or some kind of response from our town to provide aid.
If you have a motor vehicle accident and our ambulance is delayed getting to that motor vehicle accident and the fire department guys don't take action to provide medical care and something bad happens, that's going to hurt our town very badly because they are mandated to have that training, that certification, and they have a duty to act in that situation, and if they choose to stand back and not, that's a huge liability to this town.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
okay. Any further questions on this for next year? Okay, let's talk about what the plans are for the future. And I've heard you say in the past, Mark, that you were not looking for a model like the South County, and yet, you asked them and they came through with information about how they were operating. What do you envision?
So first to say is that I reached out to Zach for that information after watching this select board or the finance committee meeting in which the question came up about South County. So I was proactive in trying to get you that information about their model. So it wasn't as if I was trying to model that. Now, would I like to model that? Absolutely. I would love to have every community paying me a couple $100,000 a year to be able to do this and have full-time staff and nice facilities and nice vehicles and equipment. But I know that our community is not prepared to pay those kind of assessments. So would I like to get to that model? Absolutely. But I'm a realist and know that we're not there yet. Okay. For the last 10 years, I have been, or actually now 15 years now I've been doing this. Have been taking this organization in steps from being a first response organization only, to a BLS transport, to intermediate, to now paramedic, and now we're to the point now where we are one of the premier ambulance services in Franklin County. My goal for this organization is to be self-sustaining going forward. When I say self-sustaining, whatever the financial model of that will be, to the point where, I'll be honest with you, I want to be able to sit in my recliner at home and have my own heart attack and know that I got a crew coming to save me. As a taxpayer in the town of Northfield, I want to be able to know is that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's going to be a crew dedicated to that ambulance that's going to come and save us. That's where I want to get to. How we get there, the town of Northfield is not willing, or at least to this point, has never been willing to put that kind of money into it, have not willing to put that sort of focus into an ambulance service. It's going to take cooperation amongst other communities to really get not only the call volume and the reimbursements to do that. And it's going to take, unfortunately, it's going to take some money to do that. And that's where the assessment study, the study that Dan did, whether you agree with what it says or not, is an important step in that process. Is it needs somebody from the outside to look at what we're doing and say, this adds value to your community, where I think has been lost in years past. We do provide a huge service to this community, not only our community, but to the surrounding communities who are also struggling with ambulance service. I don't want to speak ill of people like AMR, but they have made it very clear that they will add another truck if it makes financial sense. So what does that mean? That means that if I have to cover 200 calls with that truck to make it make financial sense, I'm willing to give up 200 calls because it doesn't make financial sense for me to do 190 and not 200 of it. So there's 190 people that are not getting service. I'm just using that as a round number. Okay? They're a for-profit service. That's how they operate. I get it. As a municipal service, our goal is not to be this big major cash cow for the communities. It's to provide a service. And I think that we have demonstrated time and time again that we do provide service, and we do a pretty damn good job of it with the limited resources. We're rubbing sticks together to make things happen, and we do a pretty good job of keeping lights on and keeping the wheels moving. So that was my soapbox. But that my goal, my vision would be to get to a point where we have a dedicated service that we don't have to be struggling or answering questions about why we're here all the time. We are here to provide the service.
What I like about it too is the fact of Whately, Sunderland, and Deerfield, South Deerfield, are all sharing in the cost,
Yeah.
and are all sharing in the management of it. It's run by a board of directors, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And, that takes a load off from one town.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do they have, each town might have had their own ambulance to begin with. Do they have substations?
No. So they initially did when they first created the South County model. South Deerfield or Deerfield Rescue had it. Whately had one. Sunderland had one.
Yeah.
And they had one ambulance in each station. When they decided to come together, they agreed that the one entity would own all these resources. And then what they've now done is they built Deerfield Academy built
Yes.
them, donated, wish I had such luxury, building a station for them, dedicated to them. They're able to put all their trucks under one building now.
Okay.
But yeah, and then they consolidated, instead of having all 3 ambulance licenses, they now have one that runs that service, and that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it falls under a municipal agreement, intermunicipal agreement.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Deerfield is the financial
yes. All-
center for all that. They handle all the financial sides of it, and then they work it out with the other towns.
Yeah.
But the South County also funds their capital plans in addition to their yearly operating costs.
Correct. I mean, if you look at that letter, whatever it is that not only is their operating budget, whatever their revenue is not going to offset their operating budget to start, as well as the capital on top of it. So whatever the difference is the assessments out to the community, capital and expense. Yeah. Yeah.
One question was, since obviously some residents are going to probably ask, has the opening of St. Thomas Aquinas College and the Moody Center impacted your services?
No.
Okay.
Nope. And to be, I mean, I've been in contact with Steve Wiggins a couple times where he's had a couple of questions about like an AED. They wanted to get an AED on, and I've helped them with that project.
Mm-hmm.
But I've yet to have any calls from the campus. We haven't been up there for anything at this point.
Okay.
But they're also 20 people up there total, right? I mean, it's not like it's gangbusters or anything.
Oh,
I don't know. They put in 2 classes, didn't they, this year to start?
Yeah, I think it's
Freshmen,
over 70. It was 2 classes.
Well, I don't
That's
know.
what they we're
Yeah, it's in
claiming
there,
they were
and then
gonna
there's
do,
some
plus there's
faculty,
staff
some
up
staff,
there.
families.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
36 each
So there's-
class, I
There's
think.
probably
But
100
again, I think-
people total.
But they're younger, see, so they're not this older crowd.
Well, the good news is that they would have good insurance. The bad news is that they're less likely
They're
to have
healthy.
cardiac issues and so on and so forth.
No,
Yeah.
Mike was just curious as any resident, just to see if they've had any impact. Obviously, we're not expecting the expectations of what goes on at UMass and Amherst with all the ambulance runs, but I'm just saying, did they have any impact at all here?
I think where we will see the impact won't be for another couple of years, possibly not until they get to like where they have a graduating class and they start to have more, the families are starting to come in.
Yeah.
If they were doing sort of like sports, intramural sports, we'd have some more impact, but they're not doing that sort of stuff yet. So I think once they really ramp up and maybe they add some sporting stuff, then we might start to see some more calls. But until then,
Good point, yeah.
yeah, I think they're pretty well self-sufficient up there at this point.
Just one other thing on AMR, they do participate in the mutual aid. I mean,
Correct.
they've been here in Northfield.
Correct.
They
We have contracts with them for mutual aid. We provide mutual aid to them, they provide mutual aid to us. We also have what we were talking earlier, ALS intercept agreements, both ways, where we provide for them, they provide for us. The good news is that the times have sort of shifted a little bit, where we're providing more ALS intercepts to them than they are to us because we have medics. But I can tell you is that their focus really has been on providing service to the hospital, doing the transfers out of the hospital down to Bay State. So there's a lot of times that they are just not available. And behind that, so in town Northfield, we have AMR as our primary, we call them first, come up from Greenfield no matter what section of town it's in.
Mhm.
After that, the town is broken into two sections. Basically, the river is the dividing line. Okay, this side of the river, Orange would be coming over the mountain first, as if AMR is not available. For the other side of town, it's actually Greenfield and Turner's Falls. They would be coming in next. The problem with those is that they're BLS, they're not ALS. So if you're having a heart attack, if you call Greenfield, you call Turner's, that's great. We're going to get you to a hospital. But when there's not a whole lot they're going to do between here and the hospital, so we're delaying that care. And then if we get that far down the list where we don't have an ambulance, we got bigger problems.
Looking at these numbers alone, just from the last year numbers that Mark gave you, 75 calls approximately would have been an ambulance other than Northfield dedicated to that town that was unavailable, that we went into that town and provided a service.
Okay.
So I mean, and again, I don't want to speak ill of them. I mean, they're a for-profit company. I get it. They're a big national company, but to think that they are in a position where they want to provide service to our town.
Do they, I don't know if you know or not, do they charge towns for the coverage if they are the primary ambulance service for that town?
Currently, no.
Okay.
So again, you go back in time, you go back to when it was Bay State Health Ambulance, and then it became Medcare, and then it became AMR. They have basically just taken the assets and continued on as business as usual. And they're smart people. They know is that if they come and they say to Bernardston, if they say to Gill, they say to Shelburne Fall or Shelburne Center, whatever it is, we'll do it, but we're going to charge you $30,000. You guys are going to be, I ain't got that kind of money. Where do you want me to come up with that kind of cash? So they're smart and they know in order to protect their service area, they have to zero bid it. And that's why I said for me to get the Bernardston deal, I had to zero bid it initially because there was going to be no assessment coming from AMR. So they're smart financial people. I mean, they're not as big as they are by losing money by any means. So, but they currently do not charge. However, if it came down to it, it would not surprise me if one day they got a bill. They went out to all these towns and says we're going to start charging you, and then everybody's going to be looking for ambulance service.
Our next person isn't here waiting, so I'm going to keep asking.
Sure.
What do we got in Franklin County? Coleraine still have an ambulance service?
So in Franklin County, you have us in Orange, right?
Yeah.
You have AMR. You have Greenfield Fire. You have Turner's Falls Fire. Again, those are not all ambulances are the same.
Right.
Okay. And then you have Charlemont Ambulance. You have Coleraine Ambulance. Shelburne Falls Ambulance. South County. And that's it.
Okay, so for West County, it's those three, but they are having staffing problems.
They are having the same exact problems that we are. And I hate to say this, if they were smart, Coleraine and Charlemont and Shelburne Falls should all be talking about doing something together.
Now, you've gone to Winchester, New Hampshire. Does Winchester come here for mutual aid? Do they have any EMS service?
So Winchester does. So Winchester actually,
They go to rescue?
no, Winchester itself actually has their own ambulance. They get their ALS out of Keene.
Okay.
So we had actually, I mean, I'll tell you, in December of this year, they had a cardiac arrest in the trailer park up here across the line. Winchester EMS, they're in the same situation. They know that they've been having staffing problems with volunteers. They've actually moved to a paid staff model for a few hours out of the day. I'm not exactly sure.
12 hours a day, and this is old information, so I think it's still current. 12 hours a day, 2 people in the station, 7 days a week.
Yeah. So they're taking steps to help fix the problem. They rolled out with their advanced EMTs. It's a good step above basic, but it's not a paramedic. Cardiac arrest. They called for their paramedic out of Keene and said they're going to be 40 minutes to come down here. They called Northfield and said, hey, can you come up here and help us with this cardiac arrest? So I responded from home, went up, provided paramedic level care. We ended up transporting the patient. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good outcome, but we do that. We do on bad days. They call us automatic for the trailer park in this area up here, where they know they're not going to get up over Manning Hill with their ambulance. We primarily do not call Winchester. Winchester is on our mutual aid list, but they're down pretty far, just because historically they just had not been able to get a crew. So they're there if we need them in a mutual, like in a multi-casualty incident, we will call them. But until recently, they haven't really been staffed all that well. We primarily don't go across the state line. That state line does cause us some headaches.
Mm-hmm.
As much as it would be nice to say, oh, let's just pick up Winchester and let's do this, we can't really do it. We could. We would have to go to the state of New Hampshire and then now be licensed in that state. And not only does the ambulance service have to be licensed in multiple states, but now you also have to have personnel who are licensed in the states. And each state has different requirements. So now you have multiple continuing education requirements on volunteer staff to be in multiple states and so on and so forth. Rescue Inc., they are primary for Brattleboro, obviously, a lot of Vermont, and they also do Hinsdale, New Hampshire, Chesterfield. So they have multiple states, but they're also full-time staff. That's their full-time jobs. They have the training center. They can keep their guys up and running,
And
certified.
location is good for coming south a little bit too, where they're located.
Yeah, well, they can come up, as long as there's no train, they can get across the bridge. It's fine,
Yeah.
But I mean, we've been in years past. We've been to Hinsdale on times. We've been to Brattleboro on times. We've been to Vernon times. I mean, we've been to Keene. We've been to Keene a few times. When things happen, we all come together. And there is not a huge number of ambulances in Franklin County. The nightmare scenario is that active shooter situation at one of our schools where we got 20 or 30 casualties all at once. We don't have the capacity. I mean, we're going to call helicopters, we're going to call ambulances from as far as we can get them, but they're going to be an hour before they get here. Unfortunately, this is one of the factors of living in the rural area that we live. So.
Andrea, do you want to have anything to say here? Comment?
No, I mean, I've met with Mark a number of times. He's come to me to lay out scenarios and his concerns, and he has gotten some new staff that he's really happy with. And he tries to run numbers by me to keep me current. So, I think he's doing a good job of explaining where he is, honestly. And it's a decision that, members of the community have to make, and it's a very difficult decision. If you don't interact with an ambulance, I've never had to call one, you don't think about it, but as soon as you've had to call one, boy, you're real happy when they're there. So it's it's not always the most visible, but it's one of the most necessary services. So it's just a question of the town supporting it. And I think Mark's trying to expand. It's one of those where you've hit a point where you either have to grow or shrink. I don't think he can continue to stay where he's at. So it's a very difficult tightrope to walk, to continue to provide a level of service if you don't look forward as to how can I keep the equipment current, how can I keep the revenue coming in, and that by itself kind of almost necessitates growth. So I think that's kind of where he's tried to go. But you know, obviously all of this ends up being in the hands of the voters in the end. He's trying to lay out a case, and I appreciate that. And he's come to me. He's been very honest where he's had concerns.
I have no further questions at all.
My comment when I said I was disappointed in that study, I expected something like a comparison as to what it would cost us to get into a model like South County and the pros and cons of that type of thing.
To be honest, when the study was proposed to us, that wasn't part of the scope of work due to the fact that there wasn't a thought that the communities around Northfield would be interested in something laying out that kind of capital. Something like that can be easily determined using South County as an original study.
We don't know what was asked of you to do. See,
right. So it's something that's modular. This study is based off what Orange is doing, where it's not so you don't have a board of directors. The alternate towns just contract with the town, like Northfield or Orange, and say, hey, listen, we appreciate the fact that you run a very great service. You need to get compensated for it. We understand that the cost that you're getting in from insurance is not going to cover the cost of your ambulance service, so we're going to kick in that money. And that's what we went through. That's what the study was based on, looking at those kind of options.
So you were given instructions as to what was. We were told to hold off on anything about this because COG was doing a study.
Right.
But there again, there's the, call it communication if you want. Maybe we didn't have the right to be in on what they were asking you to do. I don't know. But that was my thought on it. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I don't need to be there at all. It's not my budget today. These are the people.
All right. Thank you.
The tax collector treasurer, I think you already were communicated, she's actually out sick. Did they tell you that?
What's that?
The treasurer collector?
She called me this morning.
Yeah, she's been sick for 2 days. She came in today and locked herself in her office just so we all get paid, and we appreciated that immensely.
Yeah.
Because she was pretty sick. But,
I arranged with her she called me the first thing this morning, and I said I will call you early afternoon, and I did, and I asked her my questions, and I'm going to pass that on tonight in the meeting of what she's doing. We're supposed to have the Board of Health.
Yeah, I saw Bob today. I didn't get the impression that he thought he was coming. I didn't specifically ask him. I guess I didn't realize he was on this agenda.
Because when he was here and
You made it clear that
It
he
was
was
very
supposed to be
clear. It
here
was supposed to be
on
here.
this date at 7 o'clock.
And remember, he first said he didn't think he could make it, and then before he left, he said yes, he could.
I did, speaks for a minute, yell at you from the back.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
I can't hear you from back.
I don't have the answers for Bob, but I did talk to Bob, and I actually have asked Jan Amin for some data. So I've offered Bob to just go with him through his budget because of the nature of the changes for what's happening with recycling. I said maybe it's a time to take a step back and look at all of the parts that we pay, which is trash tipping, trash hauling, recycling hauling, and then the cost of recycling tipping, if you want to call that. It's not a tipping charge, it's,
Yeah.
it's what we send down to the MRF. And I know that they've been very focused on the recycling piece, but I said, well, I think we should look at the whole thing. I think we should look at it all and get real. We could only get numbers for a full year based on the previous year, but we could kind of estimate that from year to year we tend to be similar.
Yeah.
You know, we can't. So I'm asking him to give me that data so that we can actually run those numbers instead of just kind of going year to year with kind of the
Because
same estimate.
The budget,
It seems to stay pretty steady.
yeah, he
Which may be
presented a
fine.
budget, and then he said, well, that wasn't the right budget. And
Well, I don't think he put enough in for the new, what he hadn't put in there for some reason, and I don't know why. What I think is the new estimate, the increase for the new recycling costs,
Okay.
more than anything. But I thought while we were looking at that, we should just look at the other pieces as well and make sure those numbers are good. Because I noticed that those numbers have been held pretty steady over the years. Well, I'll tell you right now, the cost of hauling and the cost of tipping per ton have not remained steady. So, you know, we need to look at those. I just would like to look at the whole picture and
Yes,
do an assessment.
yeah.
It makes sense at this point in time to do that with this change in recycling, and then really to talk about the revenue, because I think that the revenue stream is, you know, you can do nothing. We could increase the budget and, you know, it can go on the tax rate, or we can talk about how that revenue could be increased. And it's not a revolving fund. So people have to understand that the money that's generated by buying a sticker or buying a trash bag goes into the general revenue.
yes,
And that's why we raise and appropriate the costs of the transfer station. So although the revenue is offsetting the cost of the transfer station, it's not doing it in
not showing up as a.
right. It's
Yeah.
not going to show up to lower that number. You're going to raise and appropriate the costs. You're going to generate the revenue, which goes into the general fund, which is then used through free cash or through other revenue sources. We do,
Yeah.
you know, to actually keep our tax rate low. So it does affect, the revenue does affect.
Yeah.
It's just not a one-to-one direct
Right.
connection in the same
Right.
fiscal year per se. So, and I know that, you know, the Board of Health is very concerned about that, but the cost of a sticker, the cost of trash bags, the cost of, you know, possibly doing some kind of stickers for bags to do some different, they're having that discussion as well. And if you look around, we have gotten data that almost every community around here is raising sticker fees,
They have
bag
to.
fees.
Yeah,
I just got notified that Greenfield's raising their bag fees. There's really not much else, you know, to do
Yeah.
in terms of revenue. And a lot of people like to do it with the bag and the sticker fees and those fees because that's an actual use fee. So the more bags you generate, the more you pay as opposed to putting it all on the tax rate, which isn't as user directed. So I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know that there's a recommendation yet, but I suspect that that's probably going to come at some point. That it's recommended that there be some change in the user fees.
we'll need to have something that we can work with before we
Yeah.
put in any figures.
Right. So I do know that based on, you know, even if you were to keep the figures that you have, say we decide, okay, what we have is adequate for the trash and the tipping. The numbers that we did get from the FERCog, going to look at the estimated protection is about $19,000 to $20,000
More.
to pay for the recycling
Yeah, yeah,
next year. So that, at the very least, you can anticipate
times have changed, so,
is going to be an increased cost.
Yeah.
Whether you choose to do some of that through, you know, anticipation, but I think you're going to have to see it. You're going to see at least probably a $20,000 increase in the budget.
yeah.
I've got to believe.
Well, the one thing I just want to, I know you have a lot on your plate. You're still, again, taking time to probably learn the ropes in this place, but I think that clearly your assistance is necessary, and we would hope that, you know, a quick, I don't hate to use intervention, but your input would be necessary
Right.
as soon as possible.
I gave him a list of the numbers that I'd like to know the hauling cost and the hauling. You know, I mean, I used to do this because the Board of Health didn't run the transfer station.
Yeah.
I ran all the finance on the transfer station in my last job, and I shared that with the highway department who ran the physical piece. I just did all the numbers. So I understand, I'm used to seeing the bills, I understand the tipping costs, and those are usually 3-year bids that go through the Solid Waste Management District. So those 3-year bids, you know, there's a bid and then there's an increase each year. So there is a sheet. So I did ask, we sent to Jan Amin too and said, hey, can I have those numbers? So I'm hoping to have those numbers in that, but I wanted to get from her. They track very carefully what every town in the Solid Waste District annual numbers are for, you know, tipping, how many hauls they run and all that. So once I get those, it's easy to compute out what your previous years would have been. Look at your new hauling costs. Did they go up a few dollars a run? Did the tipping fee go up, you know, per ton? And then project it out and say if we expect a similar situation the next year, similar amount of haulage, similar amount of tonnage, here's what we can project that budget would look like. And it may be that it's fairly good on the trash piece. We know that it's not on the recycling
No,
because this is brand new. And
I just,
Well, again, any ounce of help you can provide would be appreciated,
so
obviously.
I already met with him today and said if you could get me those numbers, I'd like to have them.
So
So
is
we
he
can
gonna
explain-
submit one of these that's accurate?
I have a blank one, so we're working on it.
maybe he thinks it's contingent on getting together with her and finishing it up or something.
Yeah, no,
Well, it's been 2 weeks. I would
Yeah.
have thought,
Should have been
Yeah,
prepared and ready for.
so I did ask Jan Amin as well, so I'm hoping to have that information through one
okay,
source or another. So
okay.
because basically he has no increase. The best I can interpret is his sheet is very confusing, but
The addition is
as
wrong.
as best I can see, it's like a couple thousand increase in the assessment and
yeah,
odds
the
and ends.
assessment I received a copy of. So the assessment number
Yeah.
I
That
put
I've
in,
got a
I put
copy
in
of.
for the district. So the district number I put in for the Solid Waste Management District because I got the letter as well telling us what the town's assessment is. So I'm working with him on updating those numbers. I just would like to have the actual cash numbers and run it to see, is there really going to be an increase on the haulage and tipping?
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, and then the other thing is on these capital projects that you put forward that clearly, I think these numbers are a little bit more of the pie in the sky than something.
Well, the well is the one that he has.
Does he actually have?
He had an attached estimate for the documentation he gave me.
Okay.
So
all right,
that
we have
number
that.
may be, you know, pretty firm.
The building he's talked about for several years.
Yes, we've been.
With no specifics.
Right,
Yeah.
and I don't know where he stands on research with that, and I don't have that as an article. I'm putting together the articles now, so probably at your next meeting, I can give you a pretty good list of all the articles I've received. I haven't done that just yet, because it hasn't really closed, but by your next meeting, it'll be pretty close. Certainly financial articles should pretty much be in place,
Yeah.
so you'll be able to see, and you've spoken to most people who've put them in, so you know, there shouldn't be too much. There are a couple of things that I'm gonna request, I've run them by the select board, since they're gonna be from them. I'm gonna ask them, I was asking them for, I think I brought the furniture to you, you've seen that.
He's here.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask for a small amount of money for, to do some training, like a retreat for the new select board. We need a day's retreat when you get that new select board, because you're gonna have 3 brand new members. And I think you really need to bring in some people and really do some trainings on that for like in a whole day, because it's a pretty steep learning curve.
Yeah.
And if you think 3 people are gonna learn it, it's gonna take a long time, and that's gonna be the majority of your board that may or may not have ever served on any
Right.
board, let alone a select board.
Sounds like a good idea.
And the changes from 3 to 5 are gonna be huge. Myself, like I've never worked with a 5-member board, it does change things. It changes quorums, it changes open meeting law issues and who can talk to who, and those things really need to be discussed. So,
The one thing is, I just want to ask you on that well issue, just giving one option. I would hope also investigate the option of piping it from the existing highway department building to potentially up to that area, because that's what they previously had.
are they on a well, the highway?
Well, I
think
said
so.
that's
Yes.
where
Yes.
Right.
they are.
Yeah,
They
I
were.
think
That's
they
where
are.
previously they had their water piped from. Was from the
Yeah, from the
highway department
garage.
building. So I'm just saying as an option between drilling a well, another well, and doing all that work, looking to see if again, if they can pipe it from the building, that might be cheaper
Yeah,
than
you'd
drilling
probably, you'd have
a
to
brand new
pump
well.
it because it is uphill, so.
Again, I'm just saying it's another
Yeah, well-
potential option to see what the cost
And
is.
to let him speak to, obviously why at this time they think, oh, well, it may be that it's just not become.
I'm just saying, look at the two possible
Yeah.
options of solving a problem.
Yep.
Are you aware of any permitting requirements for a well there? I mean,
At the transfer station?
yeah.
Well, they'd have to meet they'd have to meet any legal requirements to put in a well.
No, but I mean, the need for a well. It's unusual for a transfer station to have a well.
I know, well, in areas where you have septic, it may or may not be. I mean, areas where there's water and sewer, obviously most transfer stations have water. There is some, I can see the need for it. We did have multiple problems in Buckland because it was a Sani can and you're way out there and you do have somebody who can, often they're there by themselves all day without running water. It is an issue. We had to deal with eye wash stations, and in the winter, whether that would freeze, and we had to, I mean, silly things it seems like, but those are public safety issues.
So, like
there
it's,
is
an eye wash
water.
station is required?
Well, I think it's good public health, because that's the kind of thing when you're running all of those facilities.
Potential
It's-
hazardous
It
chemicals
is, it's
too.
potentially dangerous, or even just getting something in your eye. Just throwing something in and something comes back.
Right.
So that Iowa station is actually quite a big deal at many of these. We had to buy the little ones every year.
I was going to say, do they have portable
They
eyewash
do.
stations? That's what I
You have to
thought.
be careful if you don't heat your building, because then it
They'll
freezes,
freeze.
so the material has to be removed. I mean, it's silly, it seems silly little things, but they all come up. Bathrooms, you have to rent something every year. Those are $120 a month now for a service. So you're paying $1,200-1,500 a year right off the bat just to have a porta potty, which doesn't have running water. So you're going to say, where's the attendant going? You got to get into making sure they can clean their hands. Water's. I wouldn't say it's a luxury. I'd say it's kind of a pretty good thing to have. And
It's like there has to be some heat there to keep.
You'd heat, not only you have to have a structure, water, structure, heat, septic to dispose of the water. So it's obviously, that would be
Right.
just the first stage of could be some
Well,
money.
they've got water now coming from the garage. They must have a
There must
system
be
whereby they're
a
dealing
septic
with that.
system at the highway garage. It
They
has
must
to
be dealing
I
with
don't
that.
know how they have, but I'm just saying that just opens the door to, there's gonna be
Yeah.
more to it. It's just not just the water, but it's
Right,
everything
and that's
else
the
goes
question
with
to
it.
ask
Yeah.
is whether, if they're already dealing with water and in water input, if this is a new system, why do we need, is this a change?
Yeah.
And if we're already dealing with water, then what's the septic situation? There may already be one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, those are things I'm pretty sure you will.
Okay,
Find out.
it's
Yes, we'll
time.
find out. So,
Alex is here to talk about the sewer budget.
speaking of sewer,
Thank you.
is there a sewer system at the transfer station? Are they septic or, I mean,
think they are on the line.
yeah, they're on the line, but they might be.
No, wouldn't. Well, Alex, since you're new to this process with us, what we do is go through the budget and we look mainly at any changes in the requested amounts
Okay.
from the prior year and look for explanations and so forth. So we've got your budget here, and the first thing is reduction here of in the wages.
Yes.
And so I think that kind of ties in 2 or 3 of the lines here: part-time wages, regular wages, and so forth. Why don't you want to explain what's going on with
Sure.
wages?
So for full-time wages, since we have a new superintendent now, Chelsea Little, her pay rate is significantly less than who we've previously had. So we're budgeting $60,000 for that, as opposed to the previous where it was 68, which was what I believe Eric was. Well, Ted and Eric.
You didn't put in. We don't want in here any COLA raises or anything. This is the amount she's going to get.
This is the amount
Fine.
she's going to get. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So next for part-time wages,
Yeah.
this is increasing due to anticipation of part-time assistants. and the addition of a new part-time employee, which we're still trying to hire up for. We need help down at the plant, so last year we were at 27. This year we bumped it up a little bit to 29,900, just to give us a little extra when we do get somebody for additional assistance. Because, like, for instance, right now Chelsea's on a maternity leave, and otherwise she would be here with me tonight. So because of that, we're down to pretty much 2 part-time operators and our maintenance guy, Sam. So it's just really hard to coordinate schedules when we only have 2 people, one of which is only going to be there for a very short amount of time. And so we're just trying to look for additional help in that.
How many hours a day are you trying to cover down there?
Pretty much, well, Chelsea gets in at like 6 or 7 in the morning. We keep her hours pretty flexible. It's what we agreed on for her. But when she leaves in the afternoon, I think like 2 or 3 o'clock, so she can pick up her kids, then Everett Wickline will come on when he gets out of work, so that there's coverage there until the evening. And when he is done, then somebody usually goes on call, and they'll take care if there's any plant emergencies, like for instance when there's a big rainstorm or something. Yeah. Because we need to, there has to be someone down there to take care of the maintenance of the plant when. I don't understand a lot about sewer science.
That's okay.
But when it rains a lot, you need to have someone down there to flush it
On
out.
weekends, is somebody has to cover a shift or something on weekends too. Yeah. Okay. And anybody else? Any questions on the wages?
No.
Next, I have a change for overtime wages.
Yes.
We decided to reduce/eliminate that due to the current superintendent utilization of flex time. As I just said, since her hours are very flexible,
okay.
we decided to just completely eliminate the overtime because she's available for that.
Okay, and then the on-call stipend.
On-call stipend.
Probably paying somebody to be on call.
Yes.
And
Yes. We have an overall wage reduction of $5,700, and
yes.
I'm hoping my numbers are right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we were glad to see that what we're doing works right now, and we're hoping to get somebody else down there and increase the labor, have Chelsea down there, and save them a little bit of money in the wage department, which is nice for us.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Let's go down to operation and maintenance of the sewer plant.
Okay.
Electricity, you anticipate going up $3,000?
Yes. I literally just texted Chelsea right before I came up here, and I asked her that because I wasn't sure why $3,000, and she says things have been going up electricity-wise, that we ended up just using a lot more in the past year or so. With storms and stuff, sometimes it's going to be higher or lower, so we figured we would budget a little extra for electricity.
Okay. This and I was surprised that the repair and maintenance of the plant is zero now. It's dropped. It was 800 last year,
Okay.
and they put in nothing this year. She put in nothing, I should say.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure why that's like that, but I know that additionally, when it comes to that whole line item right there, we're looking at an overall maintenance increase of $8,200.
Yeah.
And that is coming from our sewer abatement and adjustment. So I think it might be coming out of there.
I see. Okay.
And what we're trying to do with this money is something that I proposed in our sewer commission meeting. Since we've had a lot of feedback from residents who have difficulties affording their bills, we're putting together a hardship scholarship fund, a confidential type of sewer bill assistance program. So to find funding for that, I think we had to take it out of a department. And since we have Sam as our operation and maintenance guy, I'm not exactly sure how that works with budgeting now. I don't know if it starts coming out of his budget instead of ours. So.
Okay, now you mentioned something that I have questions and concerns about. The legality of creating this fund. Your commissioners have decided on this, I take it.
Correct. We put it into a motion, and we're looking to explore the legality of it, because it's something we would just like to do. we thought that it would be best if we created our own line number and account number in the future for it, depending on the legality of it. But we as a board considered it to be unanimously in favor of it. And
Well, the way maybe I'm wrong, but the
Yeah.
way I interpret this is that you're putting this amount of money in the budget. Of course, you have an enterprise fund, it's true.
right,
But does this mean that the sewer users that pay their bills are contributing to this fund, to create this fund, to help out the people that can't pay their bill?
essentially, yeah. So, The way-
I'm not sure that you
Yeah.
can legally do that.
okay.
Andrea, have you looked into that at all?
No, I didn't even know they were doing that. Is that in this budget? I don't see what line item. You haven't created it yet.
So we haven't created it yet,
Okay.
but
So I haven't seen it.
pretty much just have to check out on all that. We're not exactly sure how it would work. It's just something that we collectively agreed upon
Yeah.
to explore.
If I were a sewer user, I would want to pay for the ones that can't pay. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I really don't.
There are mechanisms by which towns can do certain things. When I was in Buckland one time several years ago, when we were back during 2007, it was, during the financial time, the town actually funded.
Did you see this attachment that came with it?
It must be in my capital piece.
Okay.
The town actually funded a line item to do additional oil. You know how there's people can apply under the state for oil, for
Yeah.
help for their oil bills. And the
Right.
town actually funded an additional piece to help residents pay oil bills. They did, however, use the criteria of it, and they gave that funding over to already the organization.
Fuel
this-
assistance is.
This fuel assistance program, and they said these are for Buckland residents on top of. So in other words, when use your same criteria, this would just push it further for Buckland residents who, for example, would have been eligible, couldn't get funding because they ran out of money, for example. So they did not administer it themselves. So it may be possible that you can come up with some funding, I'm not sure, that could look into that. But what you're gonna have to do is be very careful about setting up a criteria and who's going to administer
makes
that criteria.
Yeah.
You should be
You don't want to be
very
making
clear.
this judgment and have somebody upset over.
Well, I mean, you need to establish what that criteria is, and there's criteria out there. I would try to find
Yeah,
some other
yeah.
system that already does this, and possibly even if there's an entity that would do it for you that people apply to, like the fuel assistance programs idea, that then they're a removed outside party
yeah.
that makes it a lot easier than residents who are looking to use the Board of Commissioners, who are your own residents and neighbors, to
Yes.
sort of, also people are hesitant to tell you that
Right.
because you're on that board. If it's an outside entity who doesn't have anything to do with the town, people are a lot more comfortable being able to appeal to them. So if you discover you can even do this, the question becomes, maybe you need to think about the mechanism.
I'll speak with Chelsea.
Because you don't want to do it in an open session at a sewer
Right.
commissioner's
Yeah.
meeting.
And have
That would-
Andrea look into the legality.
Sure.
And how you would fund it. And-
Yeah.
And it's how to set up an eligibility or who the mechanism for the
But-
criteria.
Right, you want to have the criteria, and you want to have who's going to,
If-
who's going to.
It can be done, then you need to go
Right,
further.
if it can be
into
done.
that.
And I know that they did it in Buckland, and I can't even remember what the funding was. It wasn't the general fund. It was through something else that they had money, and they then decided to put it into that particular program.
Yeah.
So it can be done, possibly. I don't know specifically about this situation, but I think long and hard about the criteria and who oversees the program as well.
I have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You've gone to a new rate structure.
Correct.
Have you found that there is more need for people to ask for assistance since you've gone to the new rate structure? Has that got anything to do with it? And about how many people are we talking about? Are there like 5 people on the system, or we've got a lot more than that?
So we have 280-ish sewer users.
Mhm.
I think it's 281, 282. And I'll just explain the new classification system. So the way it works is that there's different units of measurement now.
Mhm.
A house is a different unit. compared to a laundromat, compared to an apartment, compared to a dorm. And the idea behind this, just to say it bluntly, it's taking from the rich and giving to the poor. The entities that are going to be that are using a lot more water, apartment complexes, the school, they're picking up a lot more of the bill based on how much of a unit of measurement they are in the new billing. So I don't know the number exactly, but they are just considered a higher unit of measurement to where they are going to pick up more of the bill. So we're hoping that since those entities are going to be paying more of our sewer budget basically, that we won't have to have much of an assistance program, but we're just trying it just in case. But we've had backlash already from people who own apartments in town saying that their bill has gone way up, and we were expecting that to happen. But in the positive side, the residents who showed up at our public forum last year complaining about their sewer bills going up have now gone way down. So it's the balance. We're not going to make everybody happy here, but we're trying to do the best we can to create a functional form of billing. And this was Chelsea's idea. This ECU classification system is what it's called, and other communities do it. New Hampshire, I think she used that as a case study, and so we're doing it here now. We put it into motion.
Just so you know, you're talking to a former member of the sewer commission. So, and she's probably thinking of the way you did the billing.
We switched it from
years past.
the units to.
So she knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, but I was just wondering if, since you've switched to that, if that's why people are all of a sudden saying, you've got somebody that's for example, like Lois, that doesn't use a whole lot of water. Before it was based off their water use. And now, she's not using much water, so her bill was probably low before, and now all of a sudden her bill's gone way up, and she's on a big system. No, she's not on the system, but it's just as an example. You've got somebody
I
that.
assume there was a minimum use bill anyway. I mean,
Hookup fee, I believe it is.
well, but wasn't there a minimum use?
It used to be a minimum use.
So there was a floor.
I believe it used to be minimum use, unless they changed the structure.
So there used to be a minimum use bill, I think, regardless. So you couldn't, you wouldn't go to just, you hit a
Couldn't
certain
go below
threshold, you were at a minimum.
Right. There was a
I
minimum.
don't know the difference between that minimum use and the household use. I honestly can't say.
Right.
I know that
It's just
difference.
different. It's all based on units rather than water use.
Right.
And I was just wondering if now all of a sudden people are like, it's the people that are, living alone, that their bill went way up, and before it was way down.
We're hoping that the people who are living alone in a single family house will end up paying less than what they've been paying in the past. And
Let's hope.
let's hope. And the people who are, landlords will be paying a lot more. There's no other easy way of putting it. That's the way it is, and we wanted it to be that way. We wanted to put more pressure on the bigger entities like the campus to start paying a little bit more for water usage. We have a very small plant, and they do have a lot of usage for water. So it's time to have them start paying. That's the way it is. We're standing by it.
There's, on the narrative part here, there's another one that's, let's see. Transfer to general fund needs to be reevaluated.
Right. As current.
She does not take the insurance, but the charge would be only for what is actually used. If she doesn't take insurance through the town,
Okay.
it wouldn't be charged to that enterprise fund.
Right, but the transfer to the general fund isn't just about insurance. The transfer to the general fund is to essentially compensate for the pieces of the town's work
Yes,
that is overseen. So,
like the accountant's work and work.
the treasurer collector's work, my work with her, where her personnel
Yes.
files and everything. So there's different ways to look at that. I have begun to look at that in particular. Some people look at it and say, what percentage are you of the budget?
Okay,
Then you pick that percentage. What percentage of payroll, what percentage because it's very hard to draw out the direct cost. How many hours did you spend,
Yeah.
cutting her check every year? Well,
yeah. I don't
it's
know
hard.
how it was allocated.
Right, and when I did it for previously in the community, because we also had sewer, we did a percentage. Another thing you have to take into account is, you know, they're paying, like for example, they're on our insurance schedule for the vehicle.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
part of the transfer
Yeah,
to the general
that is.
fund. They have to, we're paying their interest. They're not going to go out and get their own insurance policy. It doesn't
No,
make
no.
a lot of sense. Same with the building and the structure. They're on our insurance for that. So the transfer to the general fund has to say how much of that piece are they. So you can do that formulaically. You can say, here's what all the buildings are worth. Here's what their building is worth. Do the math. Oh, they're 8% of our value. Therefore,
Sure.
they pay. So that's, you have
this
to
is
look
all,
at all of
Alex,
that.
because it's an enterprise fund.
Right.
So,
So that
otherwise they
transfer
don't-
to the general fund, we have to look at it because it's been kind of, I guess, the same for a
So
long time.
What percentage should be transferred over then?
Well, that's what I'm looking at now because it's different for different things. You know, obviously the percentage of the buildings is different than how much time you use it for personnel. There's fewer people there than there
Yeah.
is, you know,
Oh, sure.
the infrastructure may be worth a certain amount. So it's coming up with an equation.
The one thing I'd caution you though on the health insurance, we hope this employee stays, and that's fine, but you have to anticipate what if she doesn't, and what if somebody comes on that does want the health
Yeah,
insurance?
this is an issue we've had in the past, is we made a mistake as a sewer commission. After Eric had left, we didn't anticipate a cost for health insurance when we had Tim Little on for a little while. And it astronomically created this budget issue for ourselves. It did. And things got a little hectic for a while. But luckily, Chelsea is on her husband's
Yeah.
health insurance plan, which helps the town, which helps the users out quite a bit. It
For
really
this
does.
fiscal year.
It really
then,
does.
Yeah.
So we are hoping that she stays, so that this.
Okay. Well, it sounds to me as though Andrea's
But
looking
that
into it.
percentage, right, that percentage wouldn't actually, that's a direct cost, in my opinion, that would just be billed to them. It's the softer costs that we
Yes.
have to break out. Because it's very easy to know exactly what our health insurance cost would be.
Sure.
It's the same as our salary, that we don't have to we know what those numbers are. That number would then go directly to the sewer, and they would have to figure out how to budget, whether they hold whatever they need to do and allocate the
Okay,
money,
now,
whatever
do
way.
you anticipate a different figure ready for the next fiscal year then on that, on those soft costs?
It's possible, yeah. I'm looking into it. I'm trying to identify what I consider all those soft costs to
Yeah.
actually be. You have to think category by category and make sure you're not missing any of them.
It's something the accountant used to take care of.
Right, and I think a number was picked that they probably thought was fair, and it probably was, but it's just been a number of years, and since I don't have
Yeah.
access to that formula, we're trying to think what is the rational formula.
So
I
it
mean,
sounds, Alex, as though Andrea will work with you.
I don't think it would be a huge, we're not looking at,
Yeah.
like, it's gonna go from
Sure.
30 to
Sure.
60,000 or
Right.
something. It's not gonna be a huge, I
Yeah.
can't imagine it's changed that dramatically. But at least we would then have a rationale to say how we got to that number,
Yeah,
Yeah.
which would be useful
okay,
going
So-
forward.
Lastly, here on my summary sheet,
yeah.
it looks like we have an overall budget increase of $2,500, but however, $6,000 was added for sewer rate billing calculation, which was added to the actual budget.
Yes,
And this results in an overall budget decrease of $3,500.
we like decreases.
Well, we do too, and I'll say this. We're trying really hard to keep this plant alive. It is what I call a pre-EPA era plant. It was built before any of this environmental stuff existed, protection, which I'm glad exists today. But the thing is, from a commissioner's perspective and from a sewer manager's perspective, it makes it very hard to keep things on budget when we have constant pressure from the state and federal government to make these $1 million capital upgrades that we simply can't afford. And because of it, we're trying really hard to make do with what we have. It's not easy. When we have a major rainstorm, our plant and many other plants have to just take in what we can, clean what we can, and flush it to the Connecticut. It is what it is. Eventually, we're hoping that we'll have a more state-of-the-art plant, as every town would like to have, but we're working with the best of what we have right now. And
I think there've been some upgrades, Jack, you probably remember over the years, isn't there borrowing right now? We're paying off some upgrades on it.
Wasn't that for the engineering study to figure out what you need?
Yes.
The inflow and infiltration
Yeah.
study.
We had our big I&I report that this was before my time on the commission. I just got on when that had been agreed upon, right around that time, 2 years ago now. And we worked with David Prickett Consulting, and we spent well over $100,000 to get a report on things that the plant needs. I haven't extensively looked at the report. I've left that to the employees of the plant to pick it apart. But
I think some of the capital requests last year also reflect some of that. She put a large capital request last year to do some work with sewer manhole work,
Right.
and that's part of that.
snaking, I think is what it's called.
Right, that part of that is the inflow and infiltration, because what they find is there's a lot of infiltration and inflow into the system when you have bad manhole covers, when you have damage to the area. I mean, you have to repair all that over time, because what you get is a lot of just water and runoff going through your system, which is not only bad for your system because it throws all your chemicals off, it's also hard on your system because your system's working that much harder to keep processing water that's essentially rainwater.
And the bugs like to feast on the bacteria and stuff, and if they can't feast on that,
Right.
then
Your
you don't want
system-
to feast on
Your
chemicals.
ecology starts to go.
Yeah.
But I have to say, working with Chelsea, I mean, she came on not that much after me, so she's been here not that much.
Almost a year.
She's done a lot. I mean, I've been down there, and I'm pretty sure that they must be happy with her at DEP. I mean, she got a lot of systems back online that, weren't up and running. The aerator had been a problem.
Yeah,
She got that up and running. She's cleaning tanks when I was there. She's got the bugs in again, so they are adding the goop that they used to, polymer that they used to have to add to attach to the thing. She's actually got the bugs growing again, and that's a more natural system. So she's put a lot into getting that plant to operate
We
properly.
got a better floor now. We have
Her
Sam Stevens down
workstation
there.
got repaired.
Workstation got repaired.
She had some conditions down there. So I really do think that she's made a big difference
Good.
in the operations of the plant, in terms of, I think, environmentally as well. I
Yeah.
think that,
What DEP, what we notice, what they like to see is they want to make sure that we're making an effort to improve something every year, and which is nice to see. And so, because they know at this point that we're not going to be able to afford a huge upgrade.
Sure.
So as long as we chip away a little bit at a time each year, we're able to make a difference.
Yeah.
We're hoping.
But there's no capital projects this year?
None that we can come up with at the moment. We do anticipate a garage, not a garage, but a bigger office building so that the sewer plant director doesn't have to work in the laboratory area. That's not what we want, it's what DEP wants. And they don't want to see a sewer manager working in the same area where the biology is happening. They want them in a separate location. So it's really early on, but we would like to consider I can't speak for the commission, but perhaps a land purchase so that we can have the necessary space to put in one of those modular offices or something on the property. So that that way the administration can have their own area and then the lab can have their area as well. So
But not this year then.
nothing at this time, no. That is a long-term goal, and down the road we'll look at for that when it comes.
Anything else?
No.
Sue?
I'm all set.
Okay, then why don't we leave it that Andrea works with you, and if there are any changes, she'll let us know what that might be. How's
Sure.
that?
Sure, and maybe we'll follow up on the legality question.
Yes,
of the
definitely.
the hardship scholarship fund.
Yes,
So
okay,
do that.
all right,
Other than that, thank you very much for your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. As far as Melissa's reports, the two positions remain separate positions, and she understands that. But as far as I can remember, we've always had one person covering both. But remember when we had legislation to make those two positions are appointed, and there were separate articles for that. And so, anyway, what she's, I asked her about, let's take up the tax collector first, the changes. I asked about what the salary figure represented, and you'll notice actually that it's the same on the treasurer. So it's the combined that she gets for doing both jobs. But she said that last year's figure was not accurate. I asked her how she arrived, because some of them are adding in a COLA and some are not and so forth. She said that last year's figure was not accurate. She's going to be running out of salary money before this year is over. So the last year's, I don't know what the figure should have been last year, but anyway, I think it's the same as this. And so she's level funding, and we'll take in, of course, any COLA that we come up with. The next and only other thing is, I believe, on this, she needs a safe. The auditors have said that she should have a safe for payments she received, cash, checks, whatever. And so she's looking to buy that now, but she's put it in under operating expense as well as a capital item. So I think we need to, when we come down to it, decide if we're going to recommend it and where we want to put it. I spoke to her about the fact that a few years ago, over the recent years, the town clerk and I think somebody else has gone for these fireproof, lockable, fire-resistant, fireproof, I guess, filing cabinets. Remember that? That they bought? And I said, are you talking about something like that? And she said that they said she really needs a safe. So that she put, what, $11.25 in each account, for half from each. Personally, it's a one-time thing. I should think it would be a capital item, a special article for that.
Yeah, I would think so.
And come out of the operating budget. But on the other hand, there may be some safe around, I don't know. Of course, I'm not talking about those huge ones down in the basement. I don't know if they're still there or not. But there used to be about that high. The accountant had one I'm talking about years ago. Dan had one. There might have been a third one around. And if they're around, fine, we cover it. If they're not being used. But she isn't aware she knows about I think the town clerks and stuff. But so that was about it. Now look at the treasurer, see if there was anything else. Salary. The $5,025 for other purchase services, the fourth line down on expense, is payroll services and the safe. So the payroll services, I guess, are $39 because they're going into a system of having payroll services. Andrea could have told us about that, which probably makes sense. Here it is down at the bottom, Harper Payroll Service. And then, in addition, half of the cost of the new safe. Anything I can add to that you wonder about?
No?
She's written on the capital form about the safe, so. Okay. I think we're talking about expenses. One thing I think we need to decide, Dan is looking for an increase, we need to decide whether that should go before the voters. He's the last elected one. When we voted in town meeting to make the tax collector and treasurer positions appointed, there was also an article to make the town clerk position appointed, and that failed. Remember that? That was the first one. So, does his request for an increase mean that it should go before town meeting?
Increase in what? To his compensation?
Wages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Salary.
He hasn't had an increase in several years.
But we want to look, I don't know. You know, he has certain fixed hours. That changed a little bit. But he also is like this week, he's there 5 days for
Early voting.
early voting. And there'll be times that, like town meeting and so forth, so you can't really pin it down to a certain number of hours either. So it's something we need to think about when we're making decisions. Then, you know, or do we go into this evaluation process of the position with the committee? Just think about it a little bit before we make those decisions. I didn't mention it yes I did to Mark, that's right. I had a message from the chief of police saying that he had received from the COG the information on the radio expense. Remember, each 3 departments have the COG radio system right now, and they have now set the figure. So okay, $4,471.52. So Chief Layton had not put in for that much. So he asked if his figure could be changed to that for the request for the radio, and I told him yes, I would bring it up here. And so that also means Mark for the EMS, and he was close. And then I think the fire department is okay as well. I think they had put in enough, just enough. So when we get, I wish Andrea was here. Give her the new figure to go into the radio, increase the police budget just by that amount. So that's the information I've had. I had a question. We got the rec commission budget, and rather than calling them in, I left a message for the chair, and she called me right back today. I asked the increase. The only increase was about $166 for the rec program director's wages, and I'm looking, of course, right away to see if somebody put in a raise thinking it's COLA and whatever. No, it was not. They have a program director, and then they have somebody in charge of the summer program. But they giving more duties. They've had turnover. They're going to give more duties to this program director, and so that they felt justified it's what, $66? $166 to up to $5,000. So I was satisfied with their explanation. Okay, next we've got the minutes of the last meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from our February 11th meeting as written and presented to us.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the February 11th Finance Committee meeting minutes as presented. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I've got the copy here. needs to go to Dan.
Want me to put that in this box?
Yeah, please.
Here, I'll put that in this box.
Thank you. I guess we're not gonna, the time has not closed yet for the warrant anyway, so we haven't got any information on those yet. As far as Pioneer, it changed, maybe it was this way 2 weeks ago, I don't know, it changes frequently. There is now a budget that includes an increase in the assessments to the towns. I haven't seen any figure, official coming out to the towns, as they've had school committee meetings and stuff, but they should be sending something out soon. Melissa didn't mention having anything, but usually I get one as well, so we'll see what that is. But I think that'll be a topic of discussion at this 4-town meeting. But it's a little late. We'll have to be making our recommendations before then. And previously we have said to them that we would recommend their budget if there was no increase in the budget. We didn't say assessments, we said budget. But there is an increase in the budget. So I still don't understand. Decreased enrollment, overhead still going up, administrative, so.
It'd be nice to know officially from them what our enrollment figures are. It'd be nice to hear.
Yeah.
Because we've been hearing talk that it's, like I said, substantially, it's gone down, so. But it'd be nice to hear from them.
Yes. I've been through communication. You haven't had any meetings?
No, there's been no meetings whatsoever.
Okay. Jack, anything
No.
in the business? And the water?
No meetings.
I have mentioned that we would meet next in 2 weeks, which would be the 10th. Now this, and I'm sure we'll need more than one meeting to go over whatever the warrant presents. And I'm still concerned with what I'm hearing about the fact that usually we talk with the select board about our recommendations, and they sometimes withdraw articles rather than put something on that we're not recommending. And I'm not sure how that process is going to work this year, and because we don't know what we're recommending and so forth. So we need some time for that too, after we talk about what's coming up, because she mentioned anticipating 5. Well, that involves some preparation that we have talked about in the past too. So, and I mentioned, I think last time, that we would meet on the 10th and possibly another night that week. And I've talked to Sandra about this room being available, and she's putting it down for the 11th and 12th. And not that we'll use both, just for one or the other. Now, it's not possible to move up to the 17th for the second meeting because Dan is having the caucus.
Town caucus at 6:30.
Yeah, and I talked to him yesterday about it, and you can't be sure that he'd be done soon enough, to come upstairs and so forth. So, what could you come a second night that week if the information is available for the warrant?
I could do March 11th. March 12th, I'll be out of town. So I could do a Wednesday, the 11th at 6 o'clock if you want to schedule a second. That's what I'm available for.
Wednesday, the 11th would be all right. If the 12th is Thursday, that's not so good.
Which one is
The
not?
12th, if it's a Thursday, it's not so good. The 11th would be all right.
11th would be.
Yeah.
I've already got it written down, so I'm good.
Okay, that's simple.
we're all good for the,
We're all good for that.
thank you. And just, oh, hi, you're back. Okay, we're just talking about when we might have the information, and I know the warrant is open through this month. And so we're saying that we'll meet on the 10th and the 11th to go over and try to decide on our recommendations for the warrant.
I have you on the 10th, so you're meeting also on the 11th?
Yes. And in the past, Andrea, if there have been, we like to confer with the select board about our recommendations, because there are sometimes that there'll be something we're not going to recommend, so they'll say, well, we won't put it on the warrant. And so we want to finish things up so you have time working on the warrant, you and Sandra in preparation, printing, all that sort of thing.
Right, and we have to, I mean, we're probably not gonna be ready to do it, only because we're not gonna have the numbers. That's a funding issue. So, we don't have free cash yet. And that's the big holdup.
And I understand it's going to be a while.
Well, I'm thinking, I was hopeful the end of March. So by the time you really need to make your decisions, you should have the numbers.
Okay.
Because that's really when you have to know for sure.
Okay.
That's the end of when we have to then say we can print. That gives us that one.
We won't have free cash. We can guesstimate the rest of it, can't we?
Yes, and even if we don't have it certified, if we have submitted it, we would have an estimate that we could kind of have a sense until it's certified.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, in terms of new growth, we will know that the 2.5% increase.
Sure.
We'll get our estimate on new growth. We'll get our estimates for revenue, revenues.
State aid, we usually level
Yes, well,
fund
we
from
have to
last year.
always wait for the state to do that.
Yeah.
But even the governor's budget, with his promise of staying with revenues, his estimate is up because he made that promise that based on whatever the revenues are. So I already have his number, but it's never the number. It's always the house number that you go with in the end. And we should be able to do estimated revenues and all that. So you'd have a good portion of the picture.
Yes.
What you'll be missing is what you're going to fund from free cash.
Right. Yeah. The source of funds for the different
Correct.
items that we would.
What you're going to raise and appropriate. And free cash. Those are your two big funding sources.
Okay. And
So that'll be the piece that
we don't have to be concerned about the levy limit because
you're way under your levy limit.
Yes.
I mean, you're not going to raise to your levy limit. I mean, you're
Oh,
so far
definitely
under
not.
your levy limit, you don't want to do that
Oh,
because
no.
your tax rate would
we wouldn't
go
do
through
that
the roof.
to
And I don't think
taxpayers.
anybody-
No.
Yeah, no, nobody.
And that's the reason for it is, what was it, Jack? It was the mountain project valuation and the campus
The
valuation.
campus going off.
It jumped your levy capacity
Yes.
very, very, very high. You're not
Yeah.
going to tax to your
People
levy
get the
capacity.
wrong idea when they look at it and think, but we did it for the taxpayers' sake,
Right, you don't want to spend to that levy limit. That
Definitely
would be,
not, so.
I mean,
Okay, anything you want to ask us or bring up for us tonight?
No, I think we're in good shape. Like I said, I've been putting all the articles together. We don't have anything from anyone else. And usually when we do, it's not necessarily a funding request anyway. It might be from an outside group that wants to put on more social, political articles. I don't have anything yet. Most of the funding comes from obviously the departments in the town and their requests. You've seen a lot of that. I will update your budget spreadsheet that you have with a few of the numbers. I know that we had to change the police number by $300 because of the radio
Yeah, I just
assessment.
brought that up.
So
he sent you the same email.
Correct. So I was typing in the new numbers. As soon
Okay.
as we have the Board of Health numbers, we'll get those in. So then I did get a notice on the COLA from the retirement system. There are, so we can look at where we think those numbers need to be. Health insurance is frozen. They voted,
Is it?
no increase this year.
Good.
So your health insurance number is, I think, we ran through the numbers, it's pretty much level funded.
That's pretty good because GIC is looking up to a 5% increase.
Nothing this year.
Yeah, that's
From,
pretty good.
from the county, from the
The
trust.
Hampshire group,
From the
yeah,
Hampshire Group Trust, yes.
yeah.
So, so in that respect, and then whoever talks about COLA, if there's gonna be a COLA, you have to look at that, and we
Okay.
haven't put in, steps. That's the next piece I'll have to put in, because those happen before even, you know, those are gonna happen
Yeah.
automatically.
The COLA, the Finance Committee recommends the COLA.
So,
And,
at some point that, and then, because that will help determine some of the final numbers I have, which
Yeah.
is the matching payroll taxes, the, you know, that's based on, those payroll numbers that just haven't been done yet.
we have frequently based it on what the federal government gave for Social Security increases, and I believe that was 1.6
I haven't seen the number, I haven't looked for the number this year.
as of this past January 1st, I think. So, round it up to 2, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, that's a discussion you'll have, so then I can put all those numbers in, and then I
Yeah.
can put the steps in, and then
Yes.
that'll be the last few pieces of the budget. I forwarded you the Regional Council of Governments budget? Did I
Yes,
do that?
yes.
Yeah, so those numbers are firm in there now.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm just trying to get all the final assessment pieces in. I'm not exactly sure where we are with the school. I think I have the last number I was told, but in any case, it's not going to be any huge increase. It doesn't look like any huge increase to Northfield
They,
for that.
well, they've changed it so there is an increase in the assessments now.
Right, so now I'm.
But we haven't, Melissa hasn't gotten any letter yet. No, I haven't either.
No. So I haven't touched that again. I've sort of left the last numbers in, and then we'll.
I think that's going to be a big topic of discussion
The
on the
number that's in
23rd.
your spreadsheet is wrong. The last year's number for school. It's the old number before you went to town meeting and it went down. Do you remember how we voted a new number in June
But
for the PVRS assessment?
yeah, well, I
But so with
made
the
the
budget
motion
sheet that you-
recommending less, and somebody amended it back up to what the request was.
But the number that's in that budget spreadsheet, he put it in that form and before he printed it out, and I can't change it because it's actually in a PDF.
Oh,
So I can only put it, so I just wanted to alert you that when the new number goes in, it's actually not the right number from last year that's
Okay.
in there.
okay.
Manually, I've been changing it in my book every time, but it's off a little bit because you put in the old number, and then the change happened in June or whatever, and that,
Yeah,
whatever,
Yeah,
July,
that's
maybe it was
right, yeah.
after, might have been after the fiscal year.
it's, the budget is a moving target.
Yeah, so, but anyway, so I'll update that, so,
Okay.
hopefully I'll have as much of the new numbers as possible in.
Okay, so
for your
I
next
didn't
budget.
see anything that would be changing. Well, we've still got to talk to Board of Health now.
Yes,
Maybe we'll get him in on the 10th then. I don't see us skip 2 weeks here because that finishes up all the departments that we want. Oh, by the way, Conservation, Conscom, no budget yet from him?
No,
And,
I haven't seen
and
it.
he turned in the one for the Ag Commission,
Yes,
but not Conservation. I don't understand that.
I don't know, I put the sheets in his box because we hadn't had a lot of response. He doesn't do email, so I physically took them and put them in, and we got that one back. So I don't know whether it's just they hadn't met and discussed it, or whether he's forgotten, or I'll reach out to him again and just make sure. I don't think any great change.
Probably level, you know.
That tends to be the case, but I'll just try at least get a verbal commitment on that.
And
If I
I'll
don't get anything.
look back to make sure there was no spike last year. You know, we're careful when we say level from last year. Was there a spike?
Well,
last-
there is in his budget, the administrative piece, which we've now
Okay.
removed.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure we're on the same page before I change his number. I don't want to change his number without him,
Yeah, yeah.
but he doesn't do email, so it's a little hard to communicate with him. We have to call him or catch him when he's in.
Might be a way. I don't know.
He's been around. It
He
just-
has.
They've had meetings, but I haven't been here
Yeah,
any of the
yeah.
evenings they've met. But I'll try to catch Bill.
So I thought we'd, be 2 weeks before we meet again, but we do need to talk to McEwen about that Board of Health.
Yes, and I will get that to you
Okay,
pretty soon. I
Sure.
will at least send it out, so you will have those numbers electronically to look at
okay,
before you meet and talk. But,
Okay.
and I'll ask them those questions about the well, like what's the,
yeah,
I honestly don't know what's there now. Are they getting water now? And
No.
if they are, how? Okay,
There's
so
no
they
water.
don't have water. What do they have for septic? They
Nothing.
don't.
no,
Right, so if he's doing water, where's it going?
they've got a porta potty over there rented. over
Right.
there.
Which
That's
is,
all they have, yeah.
yeah, so what's he gonna do once he has a well for the,
Yeah. Well, again, we'll appreciate your assistance.
I'll absolutely have a discussion. I saw him today briefly and asked him for those numbers from him, but like I said, I shot an email out to Jan too, so I'm hoping one or the other will be relatively soon.
Okay, I think we're all set then for tonight. If you are, we are.
I am. Do you have
Okay,
any more questions?
no, thank you very much.
I
Make a
move we
motion
adjourn.
to, please, I apologize, Jack. Go ahead.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Let's go. Thank you.